Hey Hotties, how you healing? How you feeling? I'm Zenzie, and if you're new, this is Hotties Heal. So if this is your first time being a viewer onto any of my videos, please take a moment to subscribe. Unless you want to wait until the end, that's fine with me. Wait until you hear the message and decide whether or not you like me before you subscribe. Totally cool. But if you do like what I'm talking about in this video and you're vibing with my energy, don't forget to like and subscribe. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about glimmers and triggers. And I came to the decision to talk about this because it's just been very prevalent in my life. Over the past month, the month of June was really full of glimmers and triggers. So let's just get into what that means. So what is a trigger? So I have my own definition of trigger, as I'm sure we all do, but I'm sure the premise of it is the same. But I took it upon myself to look up the official definition of trigger because we like to be factual over here. And that definition is a cause of an event or situation to happen. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I can talk about what's been going on with me. I'm not going to get into really any details, but the point is June was a triggering month for me. And through being triggered, I was given the opportunity to act, or more so react, differently than I have in the past. And so many times, and I'm guilty of this, I've heard people say, oh my God, I'm so triggered, or I'm triggered, or that was triggering, which fair, valid, happens to the best of us. But the problem lies in being triggered and then attempting to avoid that altogether, not even trying to understand why. And recently I was talking to my mom and she said something along the lines of, yes, I completely validate the fact that you're feeling triggered, but what is that trigger asking you to take a deeper look at? What emotion has that trigger unlocked? That trigger is probably touching on an emotional experience that is most likely more complex than the event that actually provoked this in the first place. See, so when we're triggered, it's an opportunity to ask ourselves, what further suppressed emotion is actually asking to be recognized and released? Most of the time, and I am guilty of this, anything that I talk about, I'm most likely guilty of doing or have done at some point. But most of the time when we're feeling triggers, we will try to pivot away from those uncomfortable feelings by changing the subject in our mind. And I would like to preface by saying having a positive, healthy mindset is the goal always, but not if it's at the detriment of your overall healing. And what I mean by this is when you may be consciously or subconsciously trying to avoid what's really bothering you. Being triggered is uncomfortable. We all know that. Nobody wants to be triggered, right? But the only way to move on from triggers is to face them head on and figure out the root so that you can acknowledge that there's something stored inside you that is ready to be released. When we're triggered, it's because that's an emotion that's stored inside us that wants to come out. So if you reframe your idea of a trigger, despite the comfort it may provoke inside of you, you can start to be grateful for them for giving you the opportunity to release these unnecessary stored negative emotions and trauma that may be subconsciously contaminating your current energy and therefore your overall outlook on life. One of the greatest but most common disservices we can do to ourselves is subconsciously holding on to painful memories and emotions because we refuse to acknowledge that they're even there in the first place. Accepting that they're there and allowing them to visit is the first step in being able to let them go so that you can make room for more joy. And this action actually shows an immense amount of strength and endurance, because it's no easy task to climb that emotional mountain, so to speak. So at this point, some of you might be thinking, all right, so you're telling us to heal and feel this trigger, but have no idea how to go about that. To which I respond, take some time to identify and recall that trigger. And through recalling that trigger, draw parallels as to what emotion is being provoked or invoked when you've experienced that trigger. Once you pinpoint that emotion, get a piece of paper or write it down in your journal, all the times that you've experienced that emotion. It can help you to better understand why you were triggered in the first place and what emotion it's rooted in and connected to. Is it unworthiness? Is it envy? Is it disdain? Etc., etc. When you're done writing all that down, you can either burn it, rip it up and throw it away, or if you're not for the dramatics and symbolism, you don't have to do anything with it. You can just write it all out to get it out of you and to at least have that acknowledgement of, oh, I probably felt this way because of this, this, and this time. Aside from that, if you're not much of a writer, you can go onto YouTube and look up meditations. And I also practice breath work, which is really good for reducing stress and anxiety. If none of those things sound like they're for you, good thing we have the World Wide Web at our fingertips. You can do your own research and figure out something that's going to work for you. What I do and what I practice is, of course, for me and works for me. It's not going to work for everyone, but I will say, if you are taking the opportunity to even pinpoint and acknowledge your triggers, you're already doing half the work. And I don't even want to say half. Let's not put a measurement on it. You're doing the work already. You're taking steps in the right direction to heal yourself. The overall goal, objective, and point is to acknowledge its existence and find the root. And if you can do that, you're already off to a good start. You're ahead of probably a lot of people, because so many people are just living in this complete oblivion. More power to them. Sorta. But with that, I'm brought to the next term that I mentioned earlier, which is a newer one for me. I heard this term being used in terms of spiritual healing or just acknowledging your feelings very recently, within the last few months. And that being a glimmer, like twinkle, twinkle, little star. And of course, I've heard the word glimmer before, like a glimmer of hope. But this is the first time I've actually used this term in a way to put a label on positive emotions. And I'm starting to really value this term and cherish it. And I think that you should too. So what is a glimmer? If you look it up, the official definition of a glimmer is to shine faintly with a wavering light. Now, the two words that really stood out for me when I read this definition were faintly and wavering, because they both suggest a certain subtlety. But the magic of a glimmer in time is that even though it may come just as fast as it went, that's sort of just the way of life in general. Similar to triggers, they can happen so briefly, but leave a lasting impression. So what if we held on to glimmers the way that we stored triggers? That's the money right there. And what I mean by this is, despite the fact that life will inevitably scar us in some way, it's so important to remember to cherish the moments of pure bliss and joy, which have the potential to make just as much of an impact as our triggers if we allow them to. At the end of the day, there's truly no right or wrong way to heal. If you're taking the steps to better yourself, to heal, to not allow past pain and trauma to define you, you're already doing the work. You're already taking the right steps. The right steps. Nothing in this life is the same for anyone. We're all experiencing life through our own lens. And the most important thing to remember is that life is always ebbing and flowing, or a more common term that people use is peaks and valleys, or healing, or life itself is not linear. All of these things are true. The only thing that I can stress is that it's all about perspective. I've said this time and time again. I will keep saying it in my day-to-day life and in my videos, talking to whoever's viewing, that it's all about your perspective. Life can be horrendously mad at times. We all know that. But in the madness, beauty still always will exist. It's just a matter of what you choose to focus on. There's beauty in everything. Just not everyone can see it. And I have a shirt that says that, so it has to be true. So hotties, if you made it to the end, thanks for healing with me. And if you enjoyed the content that I talked about in this video, feel free to connect with me further by following me on Instagram. Also, if you're interested in having an esoteric experience with me, I do offer tarot and oracle readings. You can reach out to me if you're interested in that by emailing me at HottiesHealbyZenzie@gmail.com. If not, that's also totally fine. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.